There are several ways to go about building a paperclip in Lightwave. I thought we could take a look at a couple different ways of doing it. The first thing that comes to mind would be to use the rail extrude feature, and I think that that's pretty much the way most people would go about it. So we will take a look at that. But let's start off by taking a look at a path less traveled, which is the lathe tool. And you might find you have a little more control. But both ways work, and you'll end up with the same model and get the result that you're after. So we're going to use this image as our reference. So I'm going to go ahead and close that down. D for display options. We'll move over to the backdrop tab, bottom left, choose the image, and I'm just going to lower the contrast and the brightness a little bit, just so it'll be easier to work on top of. We can close that and zoom in. We can see our image right here in the lower window. And actually, I'm going to zoom in to this one end. We'll start here. I'm going to come over to the disk tool and draw out just a flat disk. I could extrude it, but we'll take a look at a couple tools. We'll use the Extrude Tool just so we can kind of play around with some different tools. Now, I have a lot of points on there. If I needed a super detailed paperclip, I might go that route. But I'm going to go ahead and hit N for numeric, and under sides, I'm going to choose 12. Cut that in half. In the end, that means I'm really lowering my poly count from the get-go. So we'll go ahead and use that as our setting, and I'll move this into place right here. And let's go full screen with that window. Shift E, which is the same as coming over to multiply, extrude. Pull that down, and I'm just going to kind of angle it off just a little bit. Something like that. Now, I need to create, the straightaway is easy. I need to create this curve, and that can be equally as easy using the lathe tool. So I'm going to select this polygon, and I could flip it, and I could be thinking about how my polygons are going to be facing when I do this, but I can always fix that later. So I'll just keep this selected. It's Shift L is the shortcut key, but it's multiply, lathe, N for numeric. By default, it's going to put the axis to Y. We want it to Z, and I want to move that handle down so that I can line this up. Now, if we look, I'm looking at 360 degrees, but I don't need that. So I'm going to come over to the end angle and change it to 180. And I've got quite a few segments, just like we did when we had the disk. We had so many sides. So I'm going to change the sides from 24, and I'm not sure what I want, so I'm going to use the mini slider, and I'm just going to kind of scrub. And this is where you need to again decide how detailed do you want to get with this. So I'm going to just say, let's just say that 12 is going to work for the number of sides we need in our lathe. And we'll go ahead and commit to that. Okay. And I'm going to select this polygon, and let's extrude that and kind of get that where we want it. Say here, commit. Now, one thing that we can do as we're working, which isn't a bad idea, is I'm going to select this polygon, which is inside, and we don't need that. Select this polygon, and we don't need that. And we'll clean it up as we go from this point on. You can either do it later or you can do it as you go. So I've got this polygon selected, and let's go ahead and lathe this as well. So Shift L, N for numeric, and we just need to move the handle into place. Okay, something like that. And I can even change my end angle just a little bit, like say there. Okay, and we'll commit to that. Select this polygon right here. Oh, but before we do, let's go ahead and select this polygon and delete it. Again, it's on the inside. We don't need that. So I'll select this polygon, E, and we'll extrude that down. Say to here. I'm also going to kind of flatten it out a little bit with the stretch tool. And let's Shift L, N for numeric, and we'll move the handle down. And let's go ahead and change the end angle, try and get it back up to where it needs to be, and we'll kind of put this where we think it needs to be. I'm going to lower it here in a second, so I'm going to go ahead and commit to that, grab all these points, Just lower them down some so that it matches our reference a little bit more, depending on how close you need to match the reference. And now we just need to finish this off. But before we do, again, let's clean that one polygon up in there. Delete. Select this. E, T for move, and drop it here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at our model. It's going to have some polygons facing some way and some facing the other. The other thing we need to remember is that these aren't connected. If I select this polygon and select connected, they're not connected. So we need to hit M for merge, merge them. And now, if we want to make all the polygons facing one direction, if I come over to Detail, Align, 300 polygons flipped, and now they're all facing in the right direction. I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean up these end caps a little bit. Just take these, B for bevel, just bevel them in just a little bit, just to dress it up, add a little more detail to it. And the last thing I need to do to finish this off is we'll go ahead and put smoothing on. So Q for change surface, and we'll call this clip smoothing. Yep. Okay. And there we go. We've got a little paper clip here that was created using the Lathe tool. Let's take a look at the exact same model, but let's use different tools. We'll use Rail Extrude, and we'll take a look at some of the options for Rail Extrude. Since we have this model finished, we'll go ahead and keep it and move over to layer 2. And I'm going to maximize this lower window, this lower viewport, and let's create a curve, a rail that we can extrude along. So we'll go over to the Create tab, and there's all kind of different curve tools: sketch, Bezier, spline. We can make points and then convert those into a spline. But I'm going to use Spline Draw. It's my favorite tool to use when drawing curves or splines. So all we have to do is click, left click, and I'm placing another one, left click, place another one, left click, and I adjust as I go, because once you have 3, it changes the curve. So I might do something like this, and you'll get more and more comfortable using the tools to get the exact curve you want. But some people prefer the Bezier tool, but ever since I started using Flash years ago, I found that I felt more comfortable moving away from the Bezier tool and working with Spline Draw. Okay, so let's call that our spline. Because I already have my spline, I'm going to get rid of the backdrop. So D, backdrop, and let's just turn that off right now. Okay, so here's our spline. It's important to know where the head of your spline is. Of course, it's where you start creating it, but if you've made it and don't remember where you started, you want to make sure that you know where it's at, because that's going to play a big role in rail extruding. So let's go to 4 windows, zoom into this area, and we'll put the spline in the background, and we'll grab the disc tool, and we'll use the same amount of sides that we did for our lathe version. We'll just use 12. Now, something to keep in mind that will make your rail extrudes go much quicker and easier and get the results that you're after is make sure that you start the flat polygon. You need to start it on the head of the spline, and you want the surface normal to be facing opposite of where the head is. So kind of just picture this line right here and continuing along with the surface normal. If you had it flipped the other way like this, your object will be inside out when it's made. Now, of course, you just have to hit F to flip it back in the end, but if you want it to work the right way from the get-go, that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so with that in place, now I'm going to hit A so we can fit, and actually let's just go to a full window. We've got everything in place. So I'm going to move over to the Multiply tab, Rail Extrude, and by default it'll be set to automatic, and I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it looks like we got our paperclip, and that's nice. But if I look at my wireframe, I'll see that it's not really optimized. I kind of got segments in a lot of places where I might not need them, but let's just go ahead and say that this could work. If we don't need to worry about optimization or anything, we've got our paperclip. But I'm going to undo, Rail Extrude, and let's try uniform links. Okay, by default, it's set to 20. I've got it set to 60 here from a previous model I was working on. We'll just go ahead and leave it at 60 and see what happens. So, okay, so what this does is it spaces out each segment the same all the way around, where you'd go, well, hey, that's kind of optimized. Well, actually it's not, because now we don't have nice smooth curves here, and we've got all these extra segments that we really don't need. So I'm going to undo that, go over to Rail Extrude, and try Uniform Knots. Now, what Uniform Knots is going to do, we can use the same setting, is that it's going to look at the curve and see where the points on the curve are, and where there's more points it'll put more segments. Well, in the case of these curves, that works out great. Now it does still add some segments here that we might not need, but say we want to go this route, all we have to do is zoom in, grab these two, and we're going to make this one. So we'll come over to Construct, Reduce, More, Bang Glue. Okay, we just got rid of an entire row. We can do the same thing here. Grab these two. I'm grabbing one polygon from each one of these loops, and we'll do bang glue. Okay, and we can continue to do that to optimize the mesh. Okay, and you decide how many polygons you want to work with. Now, one thing that's really nice about doing the rail extrude route is that you still have your rail, you still have your spline or your curve, so you can continue to make you can make a high res version, a low res version, and all from the same curve. Whereas if you go the route of the lathe, once you get going, if you decide to change the number of segments, you really kind of have to start over. So both have their benefits. I actually prefer doing it the lathe route, and I don't have to worry about doing bang glue or cleaning up any of those areas. And I feel like I have a lot more control as I'm making it, and I don't end up with an extra spline somewhere that I need to get rid of. But to be honest, both ways work quite well. Decide what works best for you, and you'll have yourself a paperclip.